Hello, family. Welcome back to Landline, your direct link to all things comedy, politics, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, championper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. I have been meaning to talk to you about this for ages and have never found the right way to do it. Boeing whistleblowers, both of them murdered. I feel some kind of way about that, and it just got swept under the rug. And it wasn't in the media in the way that it was supposed to. Like, what happened? So if you're like me, just a person in the world living your life, you know that nothing is running the way that it used to run. Like, Boeing was so trusted at one point, it was a common saying, if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. Like, that was literally, I looked it up, it's like from the 60s or something. Like, this was that. I mean, doesn't it sound like it's from the 60s? I'm not going, see? I don't know if that's how they talked back then. I'm pretty sure that's the 40s. Anyway, so it feels like every day we're hearing something new about a flight door, like a door opening and flying off during like a flight, like mid-flight, just bolts and screws like rolling down the aisles. We're hearing about terrified passengers, clothes being ripped off from the wind, and 2 fatal crashes. I mean, that's not, you can never joke about that. That's 346 people just gone, and that was in February. So Boeing has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons after that incident. National Safety Transportation Board gets involved. They're investigating. These findings were supposed to be released. All of this is because of our whistleblowers. So what happened? What did they say? And where did they go? I got to tell you, so 2 whistleblowers end up dead, both Boeing. Josh Dean and Mitch Barnett. So I had to go look into, because I think Boeing, I think planes. I know that you probably do too. That's all I know. I'm like, 737, numbers, Boeing. They are among the largest global aerospace manufacturers. I had to practice saying that. But get this is what I didn't know. It's the 4th largest defense contractor in the world. Right, and that's based on like 2022 revenue, and it is the largest exporter in the United States by dollar value. That means, because you know we connect the dots here on this show, so Boeing is one of several U.S. companies that designs and manufactures weapons for the United States and its allies. That includes NATO. But let's make it a little bit more local to what we've been talking about. So Boeing has delivered weapons to Israel through commercial deals approved by the U.S. government, like a $735 million deal in 2021, and through standard U.S. military contracts. I tried to look into some of those, but it turns out that those are not always publicly available. My point is that it's not just about flights. So when you think about why would a company that does airplanes and makes you feel good, or used to, why would they disappear 2 people? That's not how I would think. That would be like Goodyear making me disappear over yelling about a flawed tire. It's kind of hard to connect the dots. But I will just say that it just brought an ominous lens to the whole thing. So here's kind of the timeline. So in 2022, Dean said he found a serious manufacturing defect, right? So like mechanics were improperly drilling holes in the aft pressure bulkhead of the MAX. That's one of the flights. And when he flagged this issue with management, he said nothing was done. And in that same period, like focus on those defects, he said he missed during that same audit a separate manufacturing flaw in the fittings that attached the vertical tail fin to the fuselage. I looked all of this up because I was like, what is a fuselage? Now I know what a fuselage is. Anyway, when that was discovered in April of that year and caused a delivery pause at Boeing's Renton plant, Dean was fired. So this is what I need. He points out a serious issue, which is what his job is. He's saying mechanics are doing this improperly. This is going to endanger people. And they said, you're fired. So then in August of that year, Spirit announced the discovery, get this, Spirit, so that's the company, that's like one of the direct companies that he's working under, because Boeing is like trans. So like a lot of things fit under that umbrella, right? So they announced the discovery of improperly drilled holes in the MAX's aft pressure bulkhead. Sound familiar? A flaw that was present in MAX's built as early as 2019. That means that this been going on. So this caused another delivery halt. So with that discovery, Dean, remember he's fired, he then filed a safety complaint with the FAA. He said Spirit had used him as a scapegoat and lied to the FAA about the aft pressure bulkhead defects. So this is what he said. After I was fired, Spirit Aerosystems initially did nothing to inform the FAA and the public about what they knew. right? So then in November, the FAA sent Dean a letter stating that it had completed this investigation of the safety issues he'd flagged. The letter cloaks the outcome, though. So they acknowledge it, but then they cloaked it, though it seems to confirm his allegations had substance. So this. I'm like really stressed out about this because Dean was 45 years old and he was healthy up to that point. In mid-April, right? So that's like now we're more recent. He was killed by a rare and aggressive bacterial infection. So he had shortness of breath. That progressed quickly to pneumonia. He was sedated and connected to machines for 2 weeks. At some point in that horrific experience, he had a stroke. And doctors thought that if he survived, they might have to amputate his hands and feet. And it's just like, I can't think of a more horrendous way to die. And this is somebody that truly risked life and limb to keep us informed. I want us to remember a time when we championed whistleblowers. Like, I know that Julian Assange went through like the worst kinds of ordeals because of it, but he was in the news cycle. We cared about what was happening to him, and the consistent pressure from multiple people and advocates and governments made it so that at least now he is, en route to, and he's back home with his family and he can have some of his life back. Think of Chelsea Manning. That was somebody who also suffered for being a whistleblower, but we knew her name. She was able to like become a public figure. There were advocates and people who tirelessly worked to get her out of prison for years. Yes, it comes at great sacrifice, and thank God for whistleblowers, but it makes me concerned that we know so little about our whistleblowers of today. And it's even more concerning because when we don't know their names, that's when they die in very odd and mysterious ways, okay? Because it wasn't just Josh Dean, and I know, yes, bacterial infections can happen. It's just that Mitch Barnett also died, right? And this was a whistleblower whose name was a little more out there, in part, thankfully, because he had a family that was supporting him, and he was very vocal about it, and he was able to testify to Congress about his experiences. So that led to a little bit more support, a little bit more awareness, and then he dies by apparent suicide. I'm using those words because that's actually the legal term right now. So recently, there was a letter in a car and a gun, and it looked like a suicide. So it's apparent suicide, and that it's called that because that means not even law enforcement is convinced that that's what actually happened. And that is currently an open investigation, unless my most recent articles, as of literally a week and a half ago, not even, was not up to date. So the investigation is still open, but I guess I just wanted to make sure that some time on the show was dedicated to talking about these two men as heroes, as somebody that was willing to risk it all so that we could be more informed. I fly a lot in moments, and then I fly not at all. This is a not at all moment. But then there are moments where I'm just on a plane every 5 minutes. And imagine how we take that for granted. Imagine how we could just simply hop skip over. My mom got sick and I was able to be with her on the same day. These companies don't give a shit about us. And right now, I told you, it used to be if it's not Boeing, I'm not going. Something has changed in the last several years, and I know we've been throwing around the term late stage capitalism, but I mean the way. Do you want to know what's changed? Do you want to know what's really changed? It's that our regulations are dying. The regulations that kept these corporations and these massive conglomerates in check, they're done. Every time we get a Republican in office, they roll them back more and more and more. Democrats are not strong enough. They don't take the fight back anytime. That's what we actually need, which is why I'm not 100% convinced about Kamala. But my point is, we are so consumed with because of how we're being treated, a lot of identitarian issues. We don't look at things like, what's the word? Look, I always forget the words in these peak moments. What's the word when antitrust? Thank you. Oh my God. We don't have good antitrust protections, and we don't have anything that is stopping these massive mega mergers. I mean, even just think about what streaming is like, right? Just how that's changed in the past several years. We are all gas, no brakes in late stage capitalism, and they're playing with our lives. And let me tell you something, you don't play about our lives. They're playing with our fucking lives right now because they're not being regulated in the same way. We have got to, I know this is so annoying, but we've got to actually leverage and use the protections in place. Yes, it's some weird group with a weird name that does work like oversight, but guess what? That was actually what was keeping people alive at that stage. That's what they're there for. That oversight. I mean, think about the weekends, okay? I know this seems like I'm really out there, but just take a minute. That wasn't given. That was fought for. Those were labor rights. Every kind of protection that we have wasn't just in place. It was hard fought and hard won. They don't care about us. All I want to say is that they don't really care about us. They don't. They don't. So I wanted to just dedicate a little bit of time because I'm like, wow, two whistleblowers from Boeing just up and died. And under really mysterious circumstances, they did their utmost to try to keep people alive and keep people safe just because you want to fly home so that your parents can annoy you for 24 hours and you could fly back and you don't have to feel guilty. Like, we all have that right to do that. And they are playing with our lives. So I just wanted to send some love to Mitch and to Josh. And I know that they're not here anymore, but I think we have a real responsibility and an opportunity to keep those legacies alive. All hail whistleblowers. Thank God for them. And thank God for journalists that work to keep them safe. That honestly, I know this is a shorter episode, but I'm still gathering a lot of my thoughts on this, but I thought I would share that story with you. It felt so important. So, just mad love and, be safe. Be very, I don't want to fearmonger, I don't want to do that, but I do want to say we're going to be fine, but we got to respect our protectors and our defenders. So with that being said, on to the next, let's hit the VMs for that question of the day.
Hey, Future, this is Josie calling in from Brooklyn. I am an anti-Zionist Jew and recently been getting into it with Jewish family members and friends about this issue of Zionism. They're progressive in all the other ways except for this one issue. They're coming from a place of fear of anti-Semitism. Wondering if you have any advice for how to approach these conversations with folks who aren't total Zionists, but definitely Zionist sympathizers and Zionish. Thanks so much.
I hear this. And look, I have been in these kinds of circumstances a lot. And so for those of you who are like, it's blood, go for blood, this is not the answer for you. This is for people who have no choice but to engage. And the thing is, don't reject somebody's pain, right? Like that's number one. I think we have a knee-jerk reaction, especially when somebody doesn't feel like they're on the right side of an issue, to immediately delegitimize their pain. If the person is actually open and willing to engage and willing to be pushed, connect your pain to that person's pain and then connect it to the broader scale. So rather than reject the feeling, that's like, well, where are Jewish people supposed to go? There's 8 to 9 million Jewish people. I always say, rather than Jewish people don't deserve to have this home, because I have often had arguments about whether Israel should exist, and I have my whole thing about nation states just being here when they're here, and that they tend to run their course. But I'll just say this, because when people think that their pain is extraordinary or unique, sometimes you have to fold it back in. So when they say, we have been oppressed and we have nowhere to go, and I ask, so should all displaced people have their own nation state? And what it does is it doesn't reject the pain, but it kind of challenges the premise. And I think that's key when we're dealing with people who want to be on the right, but it's because they have an emotional blockage. So, acknowledge the pain, but reject the premise that justifies bad behavior and bad politics is the general way. And the other thing that I think is really important, or RE bandwidth, is knowing when somebody's movable or not. Because I have met a few people who want to want to be that kind of person that's movable and genuinely are not. And sometimes the best you can do is plant a seed and move on. Remember that our best work here is not to make people see the light, but to be it. And, and if you stay that course and that person comes around, they'll know where to find you because you never left. So, just sending a love out to y'all. I know this was like such a wacky, this is such a wacky turn of events. But I wanted to make sure I got this in, and this was actually a twofer today. So we went through something special together. Anyway, shout out to y'all. Mad love. That's it for the day. Just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to Landline. It means the world to us. You already know. Show's a labor of love. New episodes drop on the daily, available on Spotify, Apple, and soon everywhere that podcasts are streaming. Do not forget to drop us your questions. Send us a voice note at landlinewithjfk@gmail.com. Shout out to KR and the whole Landline team, and shout out to you, the listeners, that make it all possible. Peace.